The clock on my nightstand glowed 3:17 a.m. when my phone buzzed. Maya's name lit up the screen like a neon sign advertising trouble. I'd been awake anyway, staring at the ceiling and listening to the radiator clank like a dying robot. Our king-size bed felt about as cozy as a morgue slab when you're lying in it alone for the third night this week. Fell asleep at my friend's place. Don't wait up. XOXO. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Don't wait up. Real thoughtful of her, considering I'd already been not waiting up for about 4 hours. I'm Ray Harlan, by the way. 38 years old, ex-cop turned private security consultant, and apparently the kind of husband who gets booty call updates at 3 in the morning. Lucky me. I rolled over and grabbed my laptop from the nightstand. See, here's the thing about being married to someone for 6 years. You develop what I like to call pattern recognition. Maya Harlan, successful real estate agent and my allegedly devoted wife, had been working late a suspicious amount lately. New perfume, phone always face down, lingerie tags in the trash from stores I'd never been to. Either she was planning the world's most elaborate surprise party, or she was playing hide the salami with someone who wasn't me. Being an ex-cop has its advantages. One of them is knowing how to use technology that most people don't even know exists. 3 weeks ago, when Maya left her phone charging in the kitchen while she showered, I'd installed a little tracking app. Nothing fancy, nothing illegal. Just good old-fashioned marital insurance. I opened the tracking software and waited for it to load. The little red dot that represented my wife's phone appeared on the map, pulsing like a digital heartbeat. She wasn't at Brittany's house. She wasn't at Lena's apartment. She was at 1247 Maple Street, which, according to a quick Google search, belonged to one Zachary Kessler. Zach Kessler, Maya's high school boyfriend, the tech startup golden boy who'd moved back to town 6 months ago with his Tesla and his perfectly styled hair and his stupid, successful company. The same Zach who'd been liking every single one of Maya's Instagram posts and commenting things like, "Looking gorgeous as always," with enough fire emojis to burn down a small village. I sat there for a moment, letting the reality wash over me like ice water. My wife was cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend, and she was dumb enough to lie about it via text message to a guy who used to investigate people for a living. I typed back, "Say hi to your ex." Then I grabbed my camera, threw on some clothes, and drove across town to Maple Street. Zach's house was one of those modern monstrosities with too much glass and not enough soul. Maya's BMW was parked right there in the driveway, bold as brass. Through the living room window, I could see 2 figures on the couch, my wife and her high school sweetheart, having what looked like a very intimate conversation. I snapped a photo with my camera's zoom lens and sent it to Maya's phone. The response was immediate. My phone started buzzing like an angry hornet. Call after call after call. Text messages flooded in. "Ray, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Please answer your phone. You're being crazy." I turned off my phone, drove home, and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. Then I sat in my recliner and started planning. Because here's what Maya and her boy toy didn't know about me. I might be just a security consultant now, but I used to be a very good cop. And when someone declares war on me, I don't just fight back. I win. Maya came home at 6 a.m. looking like she'd been hit by a truck full of guilt. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess, and she had that particular look in her eyes that screamed, "I'm about to gaslight the hell out of you." "Ray, honey, we need to talk," she said, setting her purse down like it contained nuclear waste. I was sitting at the kitchen table, already dressed for work, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other morning. "Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How was your sleepover?" She winced. "Look, I know how that looked, but what? But you accidentally fell asleep on your ex-boyfriend's couch while wearing your good underwear. I folded the newspaper and looked at her. The red lace set you bought last month. The one you said was for me but somehow never managed to wear around me. Maya's face went through about 17 different expressions before settling on defensive. You've been tracking my phone? That's insane, Ray. That's controlling and… That's practical, I interrupted. And before you start throwing around words like controlling, maybe you should explain why you've been lying to me for weeks. She sat down across from me, and I could see her brain working, trying to spin this into something that wasn't exactly what it looked like. Zach and I are just friends. We were talking about old times, and I guess I had too much wine. And you decided to cuddle on his couch instead of calling your husband to pick you up. I stood up and walked to the counter, where I'd left my phone recording our conversation. Perfectly legal in our state, by the way. Tell me more about this friendship, Maya. Tell me about all those late nights at the office that weren't actually at the office. Her eyes went wide. You can't record me without my permission. Actually, I can. One-party consent state. Look it up. I pocketed the phone. Now, do you want to tell me the truth? Or should I start making some phone calls? Maybe to your boss? Or to Zach's business partners? Maya started crying then, which was about as surprising as sunrise. She'd always been a tactical crier, turning on the waterworks whenever she got caught doing something she shouldn't. Ray, please. It's not serious. It's just… I don't know. I was bored. Our marriage has been so routine, and when Zach came back to town, it felt exciting again. Exciting. I nodded like that made perfect sense. So you decided to spice things up by cheating on me with the guy who dumped you for college cheerleader 20 years ago. He didn't dump me, we just… Maya. I said her name quietly, and something in my tone made her stop talking. I want you to listen very carefully. You have two choices here. You can end whatever this is with Zach right now, today, and we can try to work through this. Or you can keep lying to me, and I can make your life very, very complicated. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining consequences. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I'm going to work. When I get home tonight, I want to hear that you've told Zach it's over. And Maya, if I find out you're still lying to me, you're going to discover just how creative an ex-cop can get when he's been betrayed. I left her sitting there with mascara running down her cheeks and drove to my office, where my business partner and best friend, Tony Alvarez, was waiting with coffee and his usual shit-eating grin. You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes, Tony said. He was a short, stocky guy with graying hair and the kind of mustache that belonged in a 70s cop show. We'd been partners back when I was still wearing a badge, and he was the only person I trusted completely. Maya's cheating on me, I said, dropping into my desk chair. Tony's grin disappeared. Shit, man, you sure? I told him everything. The late nights, the tracking app, the 3 a.m. text, the photo I'd taken. Tony listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled. So what's the plan? He asked. What makes you think I have a plan? Because I've known you for 15 years, and you always have a plan. He grinned again. Plus, you've got that look in your eyes. The same look you used to get when we were closing in on a perp who thought he was smarter than us. He wasn't wrong. I did have a plan, or at least the beginning of one. I'm going to find out exactly what Maya and her boyfriend are up to, I said, and then I'm going to destroy them both. Turns out, Maya was an even worse liar than I thought. That evening, she came home with flowers and a story about how she'd ended things with Zach and wanted to work on our marriage. She said all the right words, made all the right promises, even initiated sex for the first time in months. But the tracking app told a different story. 3 days later, she was back at Zach's house. This time, I didn't confront her. Instead, I decided to do a little investigating. Zach Kessler owned a tech startup called Innovation Solutions, which was the kind of meaningless name that screamed, "I'm trying to sound important." His office was in one of those trendy converted warehouse buildings downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30 a.m., Maya's BMW pulled into the parking lot. She got out wearing a dress I'd never seen before and walked into the building like she owned the place. Through my binoculars, I watched her take the elevator to the third floor. An hour later, they both came down together. Maya was laughing at something Zach had said, and he had his hand on the small of her back. They walked to his Tesla. Of course, he drove a Tesla, and I followed them to a restaurant across town. I couldn't get close enough to hear their conversation, but I could see them through the window. They were sitting at a corner table, heads close together, looking at something on Zach's tablet. Maya was taking notes. This wasn't just an affair, they were planning something. That's when I decided to get creative. After they left the restaurant, I followed Zach back to his office building. The parking garage was poorly lit and mostly empty. Perfect for what I had in mind. I waited until he got out of his car, then approached him from behind. "Zach Kessler?" He turned around, and I got my first good look at Maya's ex-boyfriend up close. He was handsome in that generic way that aging frat boys often are, with perfectly styled hair and teeth that had clearly cost someone a lot of money. He was also about 4 inches shorter than me and probably 40 pounds lighter. "Do I know you?" he asked, his voice carrying that particular blend of arrogance and nervousness that comes from being confronted by a stranger in a parking garage. "I'm Ray Harlan, Maya's husband." His face went pale. Oh shit. "Yeah, oh shit." I stepped closer, and he took a step back. "We need to have a conversation." "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "Too late for that." I grabbed him by his expensive shirt and shoved him against his car. "You're screwing my wife, that's already trouble." "It's not like that," he stammered. "We're just what? Just old friends? Just business partners?" I leaned in close enough to smell his cologne. "Because that's what I thought until I saw you two at lunch today, planning whatever the hell you're planning." His eyes went wide. "You followed us?" "I'm a private investigator, you moron. Following people is literally my job." I let go of his shirt but didn't step back. "Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me exactly what you and my wife are up to, or I'm going to make your life very unpleasant." "I don't know what you're talking about." I smiled, and something about my expression made him press himself harder against the car. Wrong answer. What happened next was probably illegal, but I'd reached the point where I didn't much care. I grabbed Zach's keys from his hand and popped the trunk of his Tesla. Then I picked him up, he really was a lightweight, and stuffed him inside. "Let me out!" he yelled, pounding on the inside of the trunk. "This is kidnapping!" "This is a conversation," I called back, "and it's going to continue until you start telling me the truth." It took about 10 minutes of him yelling and threatening to call the police before he finally broke. Okay. Let me out and I'll tell you everything." I opened the trunk, and he climbed out, his perfect hair now a mess and his face red with anger and embarrassment. "Maya and I have been seeing each other for 2 months, he said, straightening his clothes. "But it's not just an affair. We're business partners, too." "What kind of business?" He hesitated, then seemed to realize he didn't have much choice. "Real estate. There's a property development deal. Maya's handling the sales side, and I'm providing the financing." "What property?" "The old Morrison factory on the east side. We're converting it into luxury condos." He was talking faster now, eager to get this over with. "Maya's been using her connections to get the permits fast-tracked, and I'm handling the investors." Something about this didn't add up. "Why would you need Maya for that? She's good at her job, but she's not exactly a major player in commercial real estate." Zach looked uncomfortable. She has access to certain information, through her job, about upcoming zoning changes, development plans, that sort of thing. Insider information. It's not illegal, he said quickly, just advantageous. I stared at him for a long moment. And where do I fit into this little business arrangement? What do you mean? I mean, why are you telling me this? You could have just said you were having an affair and left it at that, but you're giving me details about a business deal. Why? Zach's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. Because Maya said you wouldn't be a problem much longer. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What does that mean? She's filing for divorce next week, and she's going to claim that you've been abusive, controlling, stalking her. He shrugged like he was discussing the weather. Her lawyer thinks she can get most of your assets, including your half of the house, which she's planning to sell to help finance the condo project. I stood there in the parking garage, processing what he'd just told me. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to destroy me financially and use the proceeds to fund her new life with her ex-boyfriend. You know what, Zach? I said finally. Thank you for being so honest with me. He looked confused. You're welcome? Because now I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I smiled again, and this time he actually took a step backward. And I can plan accordingly. I started to walk away, then turn back. Oh, and Zach, you might want to get your car detailed. I put a bag of shrimp shells under the driver's seat while you were in the trunk. It's going to start smelling pretty rank in a day or two. I left him standing there, frantically searching his car for rotting seafood, and drove home to start planning my counterattack. Maya filed for divorce the following Tuesday, just like Zach had said she would. The papers were delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. Maya wasn't home when he came. She was probably at Zach's place, celebrating, so I signed for them myself. The divorce petition was a work of fiction. According to Maya's lawyer, I was a controlling, abusive husband who had been stalking and threatening my wife. She was seeking a restraining order, alimony, and half of everything we owned, including my business. I called my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Wells, who specialized in divorce cases involving law enforcement personnel. She read through Maya's petition and whistled. This is aggressive, she said, and mostly bullshit from what you've told me, but it's going to be expensive to fight. How expensive? $50,000 minimum, maybe more if she keeps pushing. I hung up and sat in my office, staring at the divorce papers. Maya thought she was going to destroy me financially and start a new life with her boyfriend. She thought I was just going to roll over and let it happen. She was wrong. I called Tony into my office and laid out the situation. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and grinned. So what's the plan, partner? We're going to give Maya and Zach exactly what they deserve, I said. But we're going to do it legally, mostly. The first step was gathering evidence. Over the next week, Tony and I conducted surveillance on both Maya and Zach. We documented their meetings, their romantic dinners, their trips to the Morrison factory site. We recorded phone conversations. Maya was careless about where she took calls, and we gathered financial records. What we discovered was worse than I'd imagined. Maya and Zach weren't just planning to develop the Morrison factory. They were planning to do it with money stolen from Zach's investors, using insider information Maya had obtained through her real estate job, and they were going to use my name and credit to secure additional financing. In other words, they were going to commit fraud, and they were going to make sure I took the fall if anything went wrong. This is good, Patricia said when I brought her the evidence. This is very good. We can not only defend against her divorce petition, we can probably get her charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. I don't want her charged, I said. Patricia looked confused. Why not? Because I want to handle this myself. The second step was turning Maya's friends against her. This was easier than I'd expected, because Maya had always been the kind of person who made enemies without realizing it. Her best friend Brittany was jealous of Maya's success. Her other friend Lena was tired of covering for Maya's lies. All it took was a few carefully placed comments, a few accidental revelations about Maya's affair, and suddenly Maya's support network was crumbling. The third step was destroying Zach's business. This required a bit more creativity. Innovation Solutions was funded by a group of local investors who thought they were backing the next big tech startup. What they didn't know was that Zach had been using their money to fund his lifestyle and his affair with my wife. A few anonymous tips to the right people, along with some financial documents that happened to fall off a truck, and suddenly Zach was facing some very uncomfortable questions from his backers. The fourth step was the most satisfying. I waited until Maya and Zach were having dinner at their favorite restaurant, then I walked in and sat down at their table. "Hello, sweetheart," I said to Maya. "Zach." Maya looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Ray, what are you doing here?" "Having dinner with my wife and her boyfriend." I signaled the waitress. "Could I get a menu? And maybe a beer?" Zach started to stand up. "This is harassment. I'm calling the police." "Sit down, Zach." Something in my voice made him comply. "We're just having a conversation." "Ray, please," Maya said. "Don't do this here." "Do what? Join my wife for dinner? I think that's perfectly reasonable." I leaned back in my chair. "So, how's the Morrison factory project going? Getting all the permits you need?" They both went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," Maya said. "Sure you do. The luxury condo development. The one you're financing with stolen investor money and insider information?" I smiled. "The one where you were planning to use my name and credit without my knowledge." Zach stood up again. "We're leaving." "No, you're not." I pulled out my phone and showed them a video file. "Because if you leave, I'm going to send this video to every investor in Innovation Solutions, every real estate agent in the city, and every news outlet that will take it." The video showed Maya and Zach in Zach's office, discussing their plans to defraud investors and frame me if anything went wrong. Tony had planted the camera during one of his security consultations with businesses in the building. "You can't use that," Maya said. "It's illegal." "Actually, it's not. Zach hired our company to do a security assessment of his building last month. Remember, Zach? You signed a contract giving us permission to install surveillance equipment." I grinned. It's amazing what people will sign when they're not paying attention. We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of their situation settling over them like a fog. "What do you want?" Zach asked finally. "I want you to withdraw the divorce petition," I said to Maya. "I want you to return every penny you've taken from the joint accounts, and I want you to disappear from my life forever." "And if we don't?" Maya asked. "Then I destroy you both, publicly, professionally, and financially." I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. "You have 24 hours to decide." I walked out of the restaurant, leaving them sitting there with their shattered plans and their rapidly diminishing options. Maya chose poorly. Instead of accepting my terms, she doubled down. She filed an amended divorce petition with even more outrageous claims, including allegations that I had threatened to kill her and Zach. She got a temporary restraining order that forced me to move out of my own house. And she started telling anyone who would listen that I was a dangerous, unstable ex-cop who was stalking her. The problem with Maya's strategy was that she'd forgotten something important. I used to be a very good detective, and I had friends in the police department who knew me well enough to know when someone was lying about me. When Detective Sarah Martinez came to interview me about Maya's allegations, she was professional but clearly skeptical. "Ray, I have to ask you about these threats your wife says you made," she said. We were sitting in the conference room at the police station, and she had a tape recorder running. "What threats?" I asked. "She says you told her and her boyfriend that you were going to kill them both." I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made at the restaurant. "Here's the actual conversation. You tell me if you hear any death threats." Sarah listened to the entire recording, her expression growing more annoyed by the minute. "This is about fraud, not murder threats." "That's because there were no murder threats. Maya's lying." Why would she lie about something like this? I explained the whole situation. The affair, the business scheme, the plan to frame me for fraud. Sarah took notes and asked good questions like the good cop she was. "Can you prove all this?" she asked when I finished. Every word. I handed her a flash drive. Financial records, surveillance video, recorded conversations, everything you need. Sarah looked at the flash drive like it contained nuclear secrets. "Ray, you know I can't just ignore a restraining order, even if I think it's bullshit." "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to investigate, because Maya and her boyfriend are about to commit a major fraud, and they're planning to use my name to do it." 3 days later, Sarah called me with an update. "We've opened an investigation into innovation solutions in your wife's real estate activities. We've also reviewed the evidence you provided about the alleged threats. The restraining order has been lifted." "What does that mean for Maya and Zach?" "It means they're in a lot of trouble, and it means you're in the clear." But I wasn't done with them yet, not by a long shot. The Morrison Factory project was scheduled to have its grand opening the following Saturday. Maya and Zach had planned a big event to show off the property to potential buyers and investors. They'd sent out invitations, hired caterers, and arranged for the mayor to cut a ribbon. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning my own event. I arrived at the Morrison Factory at exactly noon, just as the ribbon-cutting ceremony was getting started. Maya saw me first, and the color drained from her face. Zach was standing next to the mayor, holding a pair of oversized scissors, when he spotted me in the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear, "before we celebrate this wonderful new development, I think you should know who you're really dealing with." The crowd turned to look at me, and I saw Maya frantically trying to get to the microphone. But Tony was there, blocking her path with his considerable bulk and his biggest smile. "My name is Ray Harlan," I continued, "and I'm here to tell you about a fraud scheme involving stolen investor money, insider trading, and identity theft." The mayor looked confused. Several people in the crowd started murmuring. Zach dropped the scissors and started pushing through the crowd toward the exit, but he ran into my sister Jenna, who was about 6 feet tall and played roller derby in her spare time. "Going somewhere, Zach?" she asked, putting a hand on his chest. I pulled out a portable speaker and connected my phone to it. "I'd like to play you a recording of the people behind this project discussing their plans to defraud investors and frame an innocent person for their crimes." The recording was crystal clear. Maya and Zach's voices filled the air, discussing their scheme in detail. The crowd listened in stunned silence as my wife and her boyfriend laid out their plans to steal money, use insider information, and destroy my life in the process. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. "That recording was made illegally," Maya shouted. "You can't—" "Actually, I can," I interrupted, "because your boyfriend hired my company to install surveillance equipment in his building. It's all perfectly legal." The mayor was backing away from Zach like he had a contagious disease. The investors were looking at each other with expressions of growing anger. The reporters who'd come to cover the ribbon cutting were suddenly very interested in a different story. "Furthermore," I continued, "I have financial records showing that Mr. Kessler has been using investor money to fund his personal lifestyle, including his affair with my wife. I have evidence that my wife has been using insider information obtained through her job to manipulate property values. And I have documentation showing that they plan to use my name and credit to secure additional financing without my knowledge." Zach made another run for the exit, but this time he ran into Detective Martinez, who was waiting for him with handcuffs. "Zachary Kessler, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft," she announced. Maya tried to run in the other direction, but she didn't get far. Patricia Wells was waiting for her with divorce papers, the real ones this time, filed by me. "Maya Harlan, you're being served with divorce papers and a lawsuit for fraud and conspiracy," Patricia announced. "You're also being served with a restraining order preventing you from accessing any joint accounts or selling any joint property." The crowd was in chaos now. Investors were demanding their money back. Reporters were shoving microphones at anyone who would talk. The mayor was trying to distance himself from the whole mess. And I was standing in the middle of it all, watching my wife and her boyfriend's lives fall apart in real time. Maya looked at me across the crowd, her face a mask of rage and desperation. "You bastard!" she screamed. "You've ruined everything!" "No," I called back. "You ruined everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." As the police led Zach away and the crowd dispersed, Maya found herself standing alone in the wreckage of her carefully laid plans. Her friends had abandoned her. Her boyfriend was going to jail. Her career was over, and she was facing criminal charges that could send her to prison. She walked over to me, tears streaming down her face. "Ray, please, we can work this out. We can—" "No," I said simply. "We can't." "But I love you," she said, which was probably the biggest lie she'd told yet. "No, you don't. You love the idea of using me to get what you want, but that's over now." I looked around at the chaos we were standing in. This is what happens when you declare war on someone who's better at it than you are. Maya stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. I watched her go, feeling something that might have been sadness if I'd had any feelings left for her at all. Tony walked up and stood beside me. "So, what now, partner?" "Now we go back to work," I said, "and Maya goes to jail." 6 months later, Maya pled guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and got 2 years in minimum security prison. Zach got 5 years in federal prison for investor fraud and identity theft. The Morrison factory project was shut down, and the investors got most of their money back. I kept the house, the business, and my dignity. Maya kept nothing except a criminal record and the knowledge that she'd destroyed her life for a man who sold her out the moment things got difficult. As for me, I learned that revenge is a dish best served with overwhelming evidence and a good lawyer, and that sometimes the best way to win a war is to let your enemies destroy themselves while you document the whole thing. Maya texted me, "Fell asleep at my friend's place at 3 a.m. on a Thursday." I replied, "Say hi to your ex." By Saturday, both of their lives were over, and mine was just beginning again. Some people say revenge is wrong, that it's better to forgive and move on. But sometimes, when someone tries to destroy everything you've worked for and everyone you care about, the only appropriate response is to destroy them right back. And I'm very, very good at destroying people who deserve it.